Hello everyone, welcome to the last minute notes. In this video, you are going to listen to a story of the evolution of Indian English poetry. Yes. Chapter 1. Before modernism, the early Indian English poets. So, Indian English poetry began during the colonial period with poets such as Henry Louis Vivian Derozio, Toru Dutt, Sarojini Naidu, Sri Aurobindo. And the major characteristics that can be traced in these writers and their poetry were Romanticism, Victorian influence, nationalism, spirituality, and idealism. And these poets wrote polished verse but often limited or imitated British literary conventions. Remember, Sarojini Naidu was called the Nightingale of India because of her lyrical and musical poetry, which imitated these British literary conventions. Chapter 2. The Need for a New Voice. The independence, that is in 1947. India underwent enormous changes like urbanization, industrialization, migration, political uncertainty, and identity crisis. All romantic and nationalist modes of writing no longer seemed adequate, so the young writers wanted poetry that reflected on the new phase of India, like modern cities, ordinary lives, anxiety, alienation, individual experience. And this demand led to the birth of modern Indian English poetry. Chapter 3. The Role of the Illustrated Weekly of India. In 1946, right before the independence of India, C.R. Mandy becomes the editor of the Illustrated Weekly of India. This event is often overlooked in history but very important. Why? Because Mandy encouraged new writers, poetry submissions, and conducted literary competitions and encouraged Indian English writing. For the first time, young Indian English writers received a national platform to exhibit their talent. The weekly's influence. The magazine sponsored short story competitions, published contemporary poetry, and encouraged experimentation. Therefore, many future literary figures gained visibility through this platform. Chapter 4. Nissim Ezekiel and the birth of modern Indian English poetry. In 1952, A Time to Change was published and it is often considered the symbolic beginning of modern Indian English poetry. Remember, 1952, A Time to Change. It indeed brought a big change in time. Why is this work very revolutionary? Because unlike earlier poets, Ezekiel wrote about Bombay, everyday life, personal doubts, urban loneliness, middle class existence. His poetry sounded modern, ironic, and distinctly Indian. Nizam Ezekiel's importance. Nizam Ezekiel is often called the father of modern Indian English poetry because he liberated Indian English poetry from excessive romanticism, decorative language, colonial imitation to something very much Indian. Chapter 5. The Founding of Quest. In 1955, Ezekiel found the Quest, a major intellectual and literary journal. Its significance was immense. Quest provided a space for poetry, literary criticism, political debate, and cultural discussion. It connected Indian writers with contemporary global intellectual movements. Chapter 6. Writers' Workshop. Perhaps no institution contributed more to Indian English poetry than this Writers' Workshop, which was founded in the year 1958 by P. Lal or Purushottama Lal in Kolkata. Why was it important? Because at that time, publishers were reluctant to publish poetry. Young poets had few opportunities. So, this writer's workshop changed everything because it published Nizam Ezekiel, Kamala Das, Jayanta Mahapatra, A.K. Ramanujan, R. Parthsarthi, and many other modern Indian English writers. Without writer's workshop, many important voices might never have reached the readers. Chapter 7. The major modern poets emerge. First of all, Nizam Ezekiel. The major themes were urban life, irony, and self reflection. His important works include A Time to Change, The Unfinished Man, and The Exact Name. Second, Dom Moraes, one of the earliest Indian poets to gain international recognition. Important event in history is 1960. His work A Beginning won the Hawthornden Prize, and this gave Indian English poetry a global visibility. A.K. Ramanujan, poet, translator, linguist, and folklorist. Major themes were memory, family, tradition, and cultural identity. One of his important works is The Striders. Next, Kamala Das, a revolutionary female voice. Most important work, his Summer in Calcutta, which was published in the year 1965. She introduced confessional poetry, female desire, sexuality, gave voice to personal experience. Poetry challenged all the social taboos existed at that point of time. Jayanta Mahapatra, first Indian poet to receive the Sahitya Academy Award for English poetry. Major themes were Odisha, history, memory, and human suffering. Chapter 8, Characteristics of Modern Indian English Poetry. Unlike earlier poetry, modern poetry became urban. Bombay replaced the romantic village. Poets explored individual emotions that it became personal. Writers questioned social norms and themselves, which was ironic. The poetry reflected Indian realities rather than British models, which were very common in earlier Indian English poetry. The modern Indian English poets were experimental, that is, new forms and free verse became more common. Finally, the literary revolution that achieved everything that we see today with the continuous effort of these talented modern Indian English poets. By the 1970s, Indian English poetry had become mature, confident, and internationally recognized. The movement had successfully established a unique Indian voice in English. It was indeed a journey from colonial echoes to global voices. Here is a quick revision. In 1946, C.R. Mandy becomes editor of the Illustrated Weekly of India. After that, in 1951, Nissim Ezekiel's A Time to Change was published. In 1955, Quest was founded with Nissim Ezekiel as the first editor. 1958, Writers' Workshop founded by P. Lal or Purushottam Lal. In 1960, Dom Moraes wins the Hawthorne Prize for his work A Beginning. 1965, Kamala publishes Summer in Calcutta. In 1970s, what happened? Yes, ultimately the modern Indian English poetry firmly established its voice. And that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, please subscribe to the Last Minute Notes the night before exam companion. For see you in my next video. This is me, Arzatambi, signing off. Bye.